and welcome to this episode of the Classroom Matters podcast with me, your host, Kristy Houle. And on today's episode, we will be bringing the world of education and the corporate world together with a focus on charitable contributions and how they can impact the issue of inequities in education in the St. Louis area. I have with me two amazing leaders, one from the corporate world and one from the world of education. So let me start by first introducing Akberet Farr, who is the Vice President of Diversity and Social Responsibility at the Emerson Corporation. She has overseen the development and rollout of the company's diversity and inclusion programs, including unconscious bias training globally and the launch of employee resource groups to help promote a diverse and inclusive workplace. Akberet is a graduate of St. Louis University, where she completed her undergraduate and graduate studies, earning a bachelor's degree in management and industrial relations, an MBA in human resource management, and a doctorate in organizational theory and public policy studies. She currently serves on the board of directors for the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis and City Academy. And I also have with me today Dr. Gwen Diggs. Dr. Diggs is the Vice President of the Early Head Start at the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis. She also serves as an Adjunct Professor at the University of Missouri St. Louis. And I can attest that in her over 21 years of experience, she has served as a dedicated educator, as a teacher, a principal, a district level administrator, overseeing federal programs, curriculum and instruction, early childhood, elementary, secondary, gifted, and community education. Welcome, Dr. Diggs and Akberet. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So we're going to just dive into this conversation. And so I want to sort of let my listeners know right off the bat, this is a little bit different type of podcast and conversation that we're going to have today from what we normally have. However, I think that it is truly important and can be the crux of what we're doing as educators, because we all know as educators that there are issues in our world, in the educational system and what's happening, and it's specifically in areas of communities that we all live in. And so the reason that I wanted to bring these two folks on the podcast is because what they're doing together is really could be just such a shift and such a change in not only what's happening in the St. Louis metropolitan schools, but also, it could really potentially be a catalyst for other corporations and other educational entities to want to do the same work. So I want to start with Akberet, and I want you just to give our listeners a little bit of a background of what you do at Emerson and a little bit about the pledge that you have made to the educational organizations in Metropolitan St. Louis.
Sure. Thank you again, Kristy, for having us. So I'm responsible, as you said earlier, for diversity, equity, and inclusion at Emerson, as well as our charitable giving. About a year ago, we decided, after having been very active in the communities where our employees live and work, that we wanted to have a deeper focus and a very specific way that we could have a measurable impact in the community. And we decided that we wanted to have that to be in educational equity. We wanted to ensure that regardless of a child's zip code or their ethnic background, that they were still given an opportunity in the space of education. And so we decided over the next few years that we would focus on education. We've done a lot of great work in the community and we'll continue to do that, but really want to narrow that focus. We realize as we sit, our world headquarters is in Ferguson, Missouri, and we are in a community that we know is impacted by inequities. And we feel like this is a place that we can have a true impact, whether that's improving math scores or reading scores, but whatever we can do to really ensure that young people are set up for success, because we believe that obviously education is such an indicator of an individual's potential success in the future.
Yeah, and thank you for that background and that little snippet of why you're doing this and sort of your position there in the organization. And Dr. Diggs, Akberet talked a little bit about the inequities in education. And so you're sort of knee deep in those struggles and those challenges as the vice president of the Head Start, Early Head Start at the Urban League. So tell us a little bit about your position there, your organization, and why this pledge and contribution is going to be so important and impactful to what the work that you're doing.
Good morning again, and thank you for having me this morning. And I'm very excited about the opportunity that Emerson is presenting to just work with our early learners. Is very important. These are times where we know that there's so much going on in our world that impacts our smallest children and their future. So to hear that you want to address educational inequities is really outstanding. So for me here at the Urban League, this is my third year serving as vice president of Head Start, Early Head Start. And what a great organization to be connected with. This is a name that is known throughout the world. Urban League continues to strive to serve the community and to make sure that everyone have their needs met. As you know, Mr. McMillan, our CEO, is always ever present to step up and meet those needs of the community and of each individually. I want to say that individually he wants to meet those needs. And so with over 55, or I would say 60 programs operating within the Urban League, we're able to provide wraparound services to our children and families in Head Start. That is the beauty of being the vice president of Head Start, Early Head Start, and which is different from other early childhood centers. We can pick up the phone or run into someone within the organization and say, I have a family or I have a child that needs this service or this opportunity, and it's right within our reach, as a community. The part that we are continuing to work with is just what you said, educational inequity. So that is where I step in. We have 8 urban league centers and 6 partner centers that we serve. Last year, we had a total of 931 children funded slots. 931. That's a large number, almost a thousand kids that we could service. This year, that number has dropped a little bit because we found out that and looking at our numbers last year, we are missing that group of 2 year olds. So we made sure that we made some adjustments with our 3 to 5 year olds so that we can bring in more 2 year olds into our program. So we are very excited about that. We will continue to serve high numbers, but making sure that we reach that target age group of 2, bringing them up into the Head Start program so that they can be school ready is vital, is paramount, is the most important thing that we can do with our work and with our goals and mission. And we do make sure that we are meeting those needs. I can talk a little bit more in depth about how we do that. Anytime a child is enrolled into our center, they are assigned a family service worker. And that family service worker will work with that family to make sure that those needs are being met. I said it a little bit earlier. We have Head Start, but we have 3 programs really. We have Early Head Start, which is 6 weeks to 2 years old. Then we have Head Start, which is 3 to 5, and we also have Home Base. Our Home Base program has its own curriculum of parents as teachers. And with the Home Base program, we service pregnant moms and children that are under the age of 6 weeks old. So we're very excited to have our home-based staff, our family service workers, our teachers, teacher assistants, and all the leadership team working toward the goal of educating kids at an early age.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of things, Dr. Diggs, that I want to come back to because I really want our listeners to understand. One, I would love for you to explain to those that maybe aren't familiar with the term wraparound services what that really means. And also, there's a lot of myths that people think of when they think of early education or Head Start or preschool or daycare, right? Throwing out a few terms. And so some folks might be thinking it's daycare, it's preschool. How much education, right? Like how is this so important? When my child turns 5, I just send them to kindergarten and they should be fine. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about the cognitive, the emotional, the physical development, you mentioned curriculum, all of these truly important things that are happening with potentially 2 year olds, 3 year olds, 4 year olds before they get into kindergarten, why that's important, and what is wraparound services?
Let's start with the wraparound services. And the wraparound services are an opportunity to make sure that our families are whole. For example, if a child walks into our centers, we want to make sure that they have access to dental care. We want to make sure that they have access to the physical care that they need. We are partnered with the diaper bank, so we provide diapers. We provide through our operations department with the Urban League. If a family is in need of food, we make sure that they have food. We deliver it to their door. Our family service workers and our home based program will make sure that those services are available. We will make connections through our mental health coordinator and our disability health coordinator that if those services are needed for their child, those needs are being met. So when I say wraparound services, we look at the whole child, we look at the whole family. We have a parent engagement coordinator, and that parent engagement coordinator works closely with the families in providing those needs and also providing opportunities for them to have training. So we set up training for families. Sometimes it's just dads. Sometimes we work with just dads and making sure that they have the skills and the tools that they need. We work with families, we work with moms. So there's opportunities to bring that whole family unit together to conduct a fun activity, but the policy council and the parent and family engagement coordinators work very close together. And the policy council, which I mentioned, is a monthly meeting of staff and parents. We include our parents in the policy making efforts of Head Start, Early Head Start, and that's a mandate from the Office of Head Start. So we are very intentional about including our families so that we can learn more about what those needs are to provide the right targeted wraparound services for them and their families.
Yeah. Well, thank you for clearing that up a little bit. And Akberet, I want to go back to this charitable contribution and this pledge that Emerson has um, basically really committed to over the next 10-year period. And so it's $200 million was the pledge over a 10-year period, and that is a lot of money. So when you think of the amount of money, the 10-year commitment, and the amount of work that really needs to be done in these educational settings and organizations, where in the world do you start with that, right? That's a big commitment. It's a big goal, and there's so many challenges and so many things that can get fixed. Let's break that down a little bit and really talk about what are going to be some of the first steps of this commitment.
Yeah, so when non-educators step into the space of education, it takes some effort to figure out where we want to go. So we work with some faculty at Washington University to really decide where we wanted to move. Do we want to go into indirect education or direct spend, and how we would go about doing that? And so we decided that we would work on 0 through 12th grade with a major focus on early childhood, early learning. And so we began to look at our partners that we already have. Yes, we'll explore new partners, but for example, the Urban League is a trusted partner. Emerson's been affiliated with the Urban League for many, many years in various capacities. More recently in programs like Save Our Sons and back to school events. But we went to these trusted partners that we knew we could say, if we're interested in education, what programs and services do you offer? And how can we partner with you? So that's our starting point, is really beginning to look at organizations that we already work with. So we, in addition to the Urban League, we also work with Southside Early Childhood Center. So there's various organizations that we've tapped into to say, how can we go deeper into these organizations? Girls Inc., Big Brothers Big Sisters, so many organizations that we partner with for many years. But again, for this conversation and bringing it back to the Urban League, just having that trusted partnership. The partnership, as I said, has gone on for many years. Most recently in 2014, after the events in Ferguson, we began to really lock hands with the Urban League. We saw the impact of the work. And as we kind of turn this next chapter, believe that we can really do something great and something that we can measure and share and duplicate.
Yeah. And so, Dr. Diggs, being in this area, being involved in education for as many years as you have been, I'm sure one that you're just overjoyed to have this opportunity to partner with Emerson to figure out ways that you can just make our educational system even better for kids at an early age. But I would love to know, in your experience of 20 plus years in these educational environments in these communities, have you always seen this being a big challenge or a need in this area of education, or is it something that's really come upon us in the last 5 to 10 years, or are we just now becoming aware of it? Like, where are we with this need of inequity in education?
Where do I begin? I feel that I have come full circle, having worked in the K-12 setting for, like you said, over 20 years, and then and one of my programs that I supervised in that time was early childhood. But now to be working directly with early childhood, it's well, I feel that those years prior have prepared me for this time that I'm in. So yes, there has always been a concern for meeting the needs of our early learners, because once they get into the school system, that targeted assistance and that intentional support is not as great, I feel, that it can be right now in the age in which I'm serving. You mentioned earlier in the interview about the curriculum and about daycare and the comparison. I will stomp up and down and say, this is not a daycare. This is an early childhood education program. We have a schedule of, just like when we are in the classroom planning, we have a outline schedule for every day. We are governed by the creative curriculum, which is a research-based curriculum for our program. So we use the creative curriculum and we use teaching strategies. So every day, our teachers and our teacher assistants, there's 2 adults in every classroom to 17 kids. So with that being said, our teachers know that the curriculum must be implemented and we must be intentionally teaching and learning all the time, providing professional development for our teachers and also imparting that knowledge upon our students. So we are structured learning facility for early learners. I wanted to come back to that.
Yes.
And moving forward, what has always been prevalent to me with the upper grades is that we are missing that social emotional piece and the trauma that may come in the schoolroom with each individual child. Imagine having a school of 300 children, say K6 or 7, 8, or 9, 12, that have been traumatized in some way or another, and having those needs just go unmet. We're gonna focus on the curriculum, but here's this other piece that has not been addressed. So then you may have your behaviors and your outbursts and your suspensions and the like, or over populating, services that may not be really warranted because it wasn't met at the lower level. So yes, I see that, have seen that as a need. So now that I'm here with the early learners, I want to make sure that we are targeting the social emotional piece, the mental well-being of our early learners. So when I see, you know, evidence of this need, whether it be with behavior or developmental delays, those are the most critical pieces that I want to support parents and teachers with, providing teachers with the professional development, parents with tools, and also with the every all the stakeholders with what they need in order to support that child, so that when they walk into kindergarten and they become a third grader, middle schooler, or high schooler, they will have those coping skills to self-regulate because they learned it in early Head Start. We already know the benefits of Head Start. I'm a product of Head Start. Coming from a very low income family, free and reduced lunch recipient, great lunches. But, I know the benefit of Head Start. We know that a child that has attended Head Start has a greater chance of success than one that did not.
Yes. Yes.
So, my goal is to provide them with the services that they need to be successful before they step out of the door.
Yeah.
And that is why I really feel uh, just overjoyed and impressed by Emerson's reach, and they're wanting to provide that educational equity to our children at the Urban League Head Start Early Head Start program.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought all those things back around, Dr. Diggs, because I too, when you walk into a kindergarten classroom on the first day of school, the first month of school, the end of kindergarten, you can truly tell a difference in the success of the children that enter that kindergarten room. Those that were able to attend a Head Start program, an early childhood program, versus those that were not. And so I really am hoping that people understand that there is a vital difference in daycare, where you used to just drop your kid off to play all day. I mean, I understand it. At one point that was necessary, but now we need to really start getting these children ready and prepared for that first day of kindergarten. And, honestly, I don't even really like to say, oh, well, kids start school at kindergarten. They really, truly, we need to sort of rephrase the way that we say things, in a paradigm shift that school age really begins at 2 to 3 years old.
And
And
I'm going to challenge you with that because I believe it starts before they're born.
oh, you're going way back, Dr. Diggs.
And that truly is the reason why we have our home-based program, that we support pregnant moms, and we support that child once they're born, before they're able to come into our centers. We take them at 6 weeks old, but we know that education starts early.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and my goal, since I've been here, is to make sure that parents and teachers and the world know that if we put it in front of them, they can do it.
Yeah.
We have a Saturday STEAM Academy, and that Saturday STEAM Academy is for 3 to 5 year olds. Guess what they learn? And I haven't learned yet. Chess.
Oh,
They
wow.
know how to play chess.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so we have brought in different partnerships within that Saturday STEAM Academy to create critical thinkers, problem solvers. So they're doing robotics. They're working with junior achievement, and like I said, they're working with the chess cops, policemen that come in to do chess with our kids. They're working with Circus Harmony. We're going to bring on another partnership, hopefully the Magic House soon. So my goal, my life mission right now, is to make sure that our most vulnerable youth are prepared, just as any other school system in the most affluent
Yeah.
neighborhood, uh, in school, private learning, receive what they need to be successful.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that's a great life's mission, because all children, regardless of their zip code, deserve that. And so I think
Absolutely.
it's amazing that between the two organizations, and with the help of Emerson, and the folks that Akberet works with, that you are going to get those opportunities. And so, Akberet, I want to go back to you and ask you, I know a lot of folks that are listening are saying, wow, $200 million and a 10-year commitment. And Dr. Diggs has all these great ideas and all of these plans and programs that she wants to make better and produce with this money. Where's the follow through going to be with that? How are we going to, or how are you going to, and Emerson going to be able to ensure that this contribution is there's follow through, it's being executed, and that we really are using the monies for long term, and not just a band-aid here or a band-aid there. So how are you ensuring the execution follow through of this contribution over this 10-year period?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier that when we began the journey, we started talking to um, educators and trying to understand how do we measure success, which is very complicated, I'm sure, for educators, but even for us as laymen, very complicated to understand. So we developed some criteria that were universal, that could be applied to any program. How many children are benefiting from your services. Kindergarten readiness was one of the items that we have. So just a list of items that we request from organizations when we give the funding, that we also have them complete that information for us. It's kind of a cloud-based solution that aggregates the data for us, and it's an ongoing process where organizations can also submit information every 6 months, so that we have really an insight into what's happening. I think in the past, we would give a donation and follow up in a year, and we just don't think that that is sustainable, and it wouldn't really measure the impact. Also, as we have deeper relationships, we can really understand what the organizations are doing. So will probably mean that we have fewer relationships, but much deeper.
Yeah. And Dr. Diggs, how are you feeling about, the pressure, right? Because now that's pressure on your organization to make sure that you are using these charitable funds in the manner of which is going to best benefit the community and the children.
I'm ready.
I know you are.
So I'm very ready. I will share with you that being an Office of Head Start recipient, grant recipient for programming, we are mandated to make sure that we have the data needed to support our program. So whenever I engage in an opportunity with a partner, I make sure that there is a program evaluation. We do pre and post assessments. We make sure that you have a review of the student outcomes, whether it be fall, winter, or spring. So I am hopefully answering your question to let you know that we are result driven, and we use our data to help us to make mid course corrections as needed or if needed. And as a part of what we do, we have a monthly program report that is presented to our policy council to let our parents and our stakeholders know what is going on. What have you been doing for the past month? How has enrollment been impacted? Attendance, meals, services, disability services, mental health services. So all of that is outlined in a monthly program report that I would gladly share with our funders or our partnerships. So with that being said, I will share a story with you. We did receive a grant funding, a small amount from Washington University to conduct a parent-child interaction therapy program, which is a play therapy that is very structured that will allow parents and children to have the skills they need. They may have been dealing with behavior, extreme behaviors, or that impede their learning, or they may have been dealing with some other trauma in their lives, whether it be, it could be anything that comes into the classroom that impacts not just that child, but other children. So, Washington University, through the PCIT program that we were engaged in, that again is parent child interaction therapy, it provided such a great opportunity, but the funds were only available for, say, about 16 families, right? And you remember that number that I gave you earlier, that we were funded for 931. So if I am able to use some of that funding for the social emotional well-being through the PCIT program, that sister program is teacher TCIT training. So we also want to develop our teachers in how to work with families. But here's the story. One of the parents that went through the PCIT program, she gave a testimonial that I will never forget. She said, when I heard about the program and that the Urban League was partnering with WashU for it, I felt that that was just a godsend. She said, because I didn't know how to deal with my early learner. She said, we went from him kicking, scratching, and biting me to me being able to provide him with the parenting skills that I needed to give him to be successful. He's now able to go through a schedule, a routine, and we're working together as a family. I no longer am, experiencing him kicking, hitting, scratching, and biting me, but I'm able to be more of his mom. He's, getting his needs met, but I'm not yelling and screaming at him. because of an action that he had, because of a reaction that he may have experienced. So to hear that from that mom, and for her to be willing to stand up before a crowd of an audience to share her story was very impactful. So with her testimony and the testimony of others, I know that PCIT works, but finding the funding for it is another concern. So I'm thinking about that as that social emotional piece that can be addressed, but I'm also thinking about the school readiness piece that can be addressed with such funding, where we are providing more opportunities for our teachers, more opportunities for our students to engage in STEAM activities, science, the technology, the engineering, the math, and so that they can become critical learners, problem solvers, and be able to read. Going into a classroom here at the center where I'm located right now, and seeing at the end of this program your children writing, adding, completing sentences, 5 years old, they're school ready. They're ready to walk into their kindergarten classroom. So those are the type of things, the outcomes that I am looking for every child, not just one classroom and not just one child, but for every child in our program.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you shared that story, Dr. Diggs, because I was going to mention and hear from Akberet as well about we're saying a lot of big numbers. We're talking a lot about hundreds of kids and millions of dollars and all these things, but it truly is, and obviously as an educator myself, really seeing this on an individual basis, thinking of the children and those little, faces that walk in to your classroom every morning, and the parents that are at home with their challenges and what this could mean to them, to that one family or that group of families. Or it really is, even though it's a large amount of money, and Emerson is a extremely large corporation, and Urban League is large, we really are doing this to get to the heart of every individual child, parent, uh, family member that's involved. So, Akberet, talk a little bit about what you want that impact to be, and sort of how you vision that when we look at it from that level of just that individual child and family.
Yeah, I think that goes back to our thoughts about being deep, right? We want to make sure that we're not as concerned about, as you said, like the hundreds of numbers and so forth, but what can we do that is sustained? Where can we partner where we can see that development growth in a child's from, maybe we're partnering, there are some schools that we partner with that they have maybe a middle school program, and then they follow that child all through high school and then on to college. And that's the type of that's really what our focus is. How can we be more intentional, and where we can really see progress and change? One of the schools that we work with made an observation that as they elevate the education of the child, they see the elevation of the whole family. They see the elevation of the family in tapping into careers that improve the trajectory for their whole family. That's what we want to do. We know that that's not something that obviously we're involved in day to day. That's why we're really set on looking for those partnerships that have that continued impact on those young people. And that's why we wanted to start with early childhood, because sometimes, there's interventions that can happen at any time during a young person's life, but we felt like if we could start there and build building blocks. So maybe we partner with the Urban League here, and then we're also interested in wraparound services, and then we partner with another organization that gets them through middle school and on to high school. So that's the way we're thinking about it. I think we are trying to think of it as the individual. We do have to think of it holistically, just as we think about the dollars and so forth. But we really are thinking, how can we impact someone's life? How do we impact them so that they can go to Girl Scouts in the summer? So we're trying to make sure that our service, what organizations we support, have kind of a holistic approach as well. We work with the food bank to make sure that supports lunches in the school. So that's our endeavor. I think it's somewhat of a large feat for us, especially as I mentioned, not being educators, but we are really trying to make sure that the impact that we have is long lasting. We did something similar in 2014 when we focused really in a small radius of our community, and we've seen some impact. We've seen individuals that have come here to work that have been in the community that have gone to local schools. So we know we're ready, willing to roll up our sleeves and do what we can to hopefully see systemic change is what we want.
And I love that systemic change. And the fact that you're starting with the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis is just an amazing contribution to the community that really we all sort of are a part of, all of us. In this conversation. And so with that being said, I want to thank both of you for being on this episode of the Classroom Matters podcast today. I truly, Dr. Diggs, it's always wonderful speaking with you and being able to be a part of any of the work that you're doing. And Akberet, thank you so much for stepping up and really taking the lead on something that's so very, very important for really the future. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it really is the future of what all of us are going to be
Right.
faced with in the next 10, 20 years. So thank you both so much for taking your time out to be on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
And
It's really a
just to
pleasure.
say,
Thank
we
you.
are enrolling.
Oh, good. Yes. And for everybody that's listening, we always post this information on our description page, but Dr. Diggs, let everyone know where they can get in touch with you, enroll their students, give out that information for me before we sign off, and then I'll get some of the same from Akberet.
Sure. For enrollment, please call 314-867-9100. You may also visit our website, www.ulstl.org, for information on enrollment and also on hiring.
Very nice. And Akberet, how can folks or other organizations get in touch with you with questions or inquiries about some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, you can go to emerson.com and navigate to our charitable giving place on emerson.com.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you again both so much. I would love to do a follow-up episode in the next year, 2 years, just to see where we are and all of the wonderful, amazing things that you've both done over the next couple of years. So thank you both so much.
That would be awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you, Emerson.
It's a pleasure, Dr. Diggs.
And this is Kristy Houle signing out for this episode of the Classroom Matters podcast. And don't forget to check out all of our great resources on the Educate.today website.